No, this can't be happening to me. Marisha's choked cry echoed in the dark room where the scent of sea salt mingled with tears. In Savannah, Georgia, everyone thought she was the happiest woman alive, newly married to the perfect man. But no one knew that just hours ago, she had seen him embracing another woman under the dim lights of the pier. And worse, tonight her elderly mother had confessed a truth that shattered her heart, that man was her own blood. Amid the sound of waves and the strains of blues music drifting from the harbor street, Marisha knew her life would never be the same unless she left it all behind. In the early mornings, Savannah carries a beauty both dreamy and gritty. The sea wakes the city with the rhythmic sound of waves, threading through the cobblestoned streets, blending with the briny scent of salt and, here and there, the spicy hint of cinnamon wafting from the kitchens of family eateries. At the seaside fish market, where each fish is laid neatly on wooden trays and the vendors' cries stretch out like an old song, Marisha grew up amid those sounds and scents. Her childhood was woven from blazing golden noons, running barefoot over wet sand, and evenings sitting beside Mrs. Lucinda, who raised her in her mother's stead, listening to stories about the sea, about love, and about what people must trade away to keep their honor. It was in this place that seemed as if it would never change that Marisha met Derek. Derek was an orphan who came to Savannah at the age of 12. Mrs. Lucinda's family opened their arms to him, giving him a home and a place in the community. He was tall, with eyes dark as the sea on a moonless night, and a way of smiling that made others forget all their troubles. To Marisha, Derek was not only a childhood friend, but an indispensable part of her world. As they grew up, feelings that had been as quiet as undercurrents suddenly surged. They began to write a shared story in which anyone could see the light of destiny. People in the market called them the couple of the sea, two fitting pieces, blending like the tide and the shore. On their wedding day, Savannah put on the pure white of bouquets floating on the water. The beat of djembe drums rose from afar, the rhythm like the heartbeat of Mother Earth, mingling with the warm voices of the elder women and mothers from the fishing village. Sea wind slipped through Marisha's hair, carrying with it the belief that this love would never fade. Derek stood there, his eyes lit with a silent promise, a promise to hold her hand along the entire road of life. But life does not always keep its word like a song. Just a month after the wedding, the first signs of fracture began to creep into every moment. Derek's gaze sometimes drifted, as if following a horizon Marisha could not see. Touches that had once been warm became awkward and few. He came home later, quieter, and sometimes stood looking out at the sea for too long, as if waiting for a wave to bring something back from afar. Marisha tried to tell herself that every marriage has rainy days. She tidied the house, prepared dinners fragrant with cinnamon and lemon to wait for him, but there was still only one person at the table. When night fell, she listened to the waves as if searching for answers to the ever-widening gaps. Then rumors began to creep through the market. Little remarks, soft enough to slip into the ear, yet sharper than knives. Derek has a woman in Atlanta. A woman in a red dress, appearing with him in a corner of a cafe near the train station. A touch more intimate than necessary, a smile he had not given Marisha since the wedding day. Savannah remained the same, the sea still blue, the market still bustling, but for Marisha, everything had changed color. With each step through the neighborhood, she felt looks of pity, curiosity, and something tinged with regret. In her heart, the question kept growing. When did Derek lose his way? And if the waves had carried him far, did she have the strength to pull him back? Autumn rain in Savannah fell softly like silver threads, stitching fragments of memory together, yet cold enough to remind people that summer had gone. Marisha sat by the window, looking out at the rain-soaked cobblestone street, her hands wrapped tightly around a cup of hot tea. She wanted to believe that those clouds would eventually drift away, like every petty quarrel in a marriage, but deep inside, a thin layer of ice was forming, slippery and dangerous. Derek still came home every night, but he was no longer the man she once knew. The heavy footsteps on the wooden porch, the slow turn of the key in the lock, as if he were delaying the moment he had to face her. A cloyingly sweet, unfamiliar perfume clung to his clothes, a scent that had never before existed in this house. There were nights when Marisha woke to find Derek sitting in a chair, his back to the bed, his shoulders trembling slightly, as if hiding a sigh or a memory he didn't want to share. The light from the table lamp cast strange shadows across his face. The eyes that had once been warm now seemed distant, holding a kind of thought she could not reach. She began to notice the absences, the dinners he missed, the mornings he left earlier than necessary, the phone calls he would only answer outside. In the market, as whispers still wove through every fish stall, Marisha forced a smile, trying to build a thin wall to shield herself. But thin walls always crack, and rumors never disappear. She tried to rekindle warmth with small gestures, a meal featuring his favorite dish, a neatly folded new blanket on the chair, a handwritten card placed beside his morning coffee. Derek smiled, but that smile felt more like a polite gift than a reaction from the heart. It made Marisha feel like a guest trying to maintain manners in her own home. Each night, the sound of waves lapping against the hulls at the pier felt like a countdown. She listened, imagining each wave as a warning. Something was drifting away. In moments alone, she wondered if love was truly strong enough to keep someone from leaving, or merely a story we tell ourselves to cling to. As the city began to fall asleep, Savannah no longer carried the shouts of the market, only the sound of wind and the stray notes of jazz from a small corner bar. Marisha stood on the balcony, gazing far out where the shoreline met the horizon. She searched for a sign, a reason, anything to believe Derek still belonged to her. But the only thing reflected in her eyes was distance, a distance wider than the ocean. That night, for the first time, Marisha thought about following Derek. The thought made her feel both ashamed and hurt, because it meant admitting she had lost her trust. But once the seed of doubt had taken root, it grew quickly, slipping into every empty space in her mind. Before we begin, tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing viewers from all over come together here. Or comment 1 if you're intrigued and want to hear the rest of the story. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a comment letting us know where you're watching this video from. That night, the moon shone so brightly that the sea seemed covered in a thin layer of gold, shimmering and eerily still. Savannah lay steeped in that magical light, as if everything had been dyed in a shade of nostalgia. Marisha stood in the shadow of the porch roof, quietly watching Derek's figure as he stepped out the door. He wore a dark coat, collar turned up to block the wind, but his hands rested loosely, buried deep in his pockets, the posture of a man carrying a decision long considered. She waited until the sound of his footsteps merged into the night, before gently closing the door and following. Her shoes pressed into the small puddles left by the afternoon rain, sending ripples across the street's surface. The cobblestone road led into narrow alleys where the damp smell of mildew mingled with the scents of tobacco and liquor drifting from the bars. Blues music trickled from a dark corner, the deep, husky voice of a male singer telling a story of love and betrayal from generations past. Marisha kept far enough away so her shadow would not merge with his. Each time he paused, she held her breath, pressing herself against a mottled brick wall, her heartbeat pounding so hard it felt as though it might be heard outside her chest. In her mind, images of Derek from the past, his smile, his eyes, his warm hands, intertwined with what she was seeing now, as if trying to convince her that all this was just a misunderstanding. But the stiffness in his shoulders with every step denied her the comfort of self-deception. The alley opened onto an abandoned pier, where rotting wooden posts jutted from the dark water like the giant fingers of the sea. The wind from offshore blew in, carrying the tang of salt and the clink of mooring lines knocking against the hulls of weathered boats. Derek quickened his pace, as if drawing closer to something important. Marisha stopped in a patch of darkness between two warehouses. from where she could see clearly the moon-washed planks of the pier. And then she saw it. The woman stood leaning against the wooden railing, long curly hair spilling over her shoulders, catching the moonlight like strands of copper thread. A form-fitting red dress clung to her figure, a striking contrast to the surrounding shades of gray and brown. As Derek approached, his eyes lit up with a brightness Marisha had not seen in a long time. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. In that moment, she heard the soft click of the lid opening and the gold gleam of a ring reflected in the woman's eyes. They exchanged few words, but his fingers trembled slightly as he slid the ring onto her hand. Marisha felt as though her whole body had been plunged into icy water. It wasn't just that he had given a symbol of lifelong commitment to someone else, it was the way he looked at her. The look of a man who was exactly where he wanted to be. The sea wind whistled through the gaps in the wood, and the ropes rasping against the pier's posts seemed to mark a slow, deliberate countdown to her pain. Marisha stood still for a long time, letting the image burn itself into her memory, as if she needed proof to believe she wasn't dreaming. When Derek turned to leave, the woman's hand waved softly, the ring flashing one last time before darkness swallowed everything. Marisha stepped back, pressing herself into the shadows, her heart pounding so loudly she feared it would betray her presence. She knew from that moment on nothing could return to the way it had been. But the question was the truth she had just witnessed only the surface of a deeper secret? At night, the Savannah Sea was like a giant mirror, reflecting both the moonlight and the secrets that had never been spoken. Marisha returned from the pier with hands ice cold, but not from the wind. Each step along the wooden plank path was a heavy thud of her heart, as if her body were trying to prolong the road home to avoid having to face the truth. The house came into view, its dark red roof tiles glowing under the silver moonlight. The bedroom door was ajar, a faint light spilling through the gap, but Marisha did not stop. Her feet carried her straight to the front porch, where the sound of the waves could reach her mind to either soothe it or tear it open. Mrs. Lucinda was sitting there, her figure like part of the old wooden chair, her eyes not turned toward the house but fixed on the ocean. In the moon's glow, her face was both gentle and layered with an unreadable depth of thought. Her silver hair lifted lightly in the wind, like fine threads pulled long by time. Far offshore, the sea's surface seemed to move in an unusual way. A faint light flickered beneath the water, then grew clearer golden scales gleaming, catching the moonlight in shimmering sparks. A figure rose with the gentle swell, long hair drifting, eyes so deep they seemed to hold the ocean's hidden treasures, the golden-scaled mermaid. Marisha had heard the legend since she was a child. People said that whenever the mermaid appeared on a moonlit night, it was a sign that a long-buried truth was ready to surface. Some believed she brought good fortune, others feared her as a harbinger of loss. But tonight, for Marisha, the gaze from those eyes felt like a silent urging. Don't let this secret live any longer. Mrs. Lucinda did not turn when Marisha stepped closer. Her eyes stayed anchored to the offshore waters, where the mermaid's form drifted and then disappeared beneath the waves. In that moment, the distance between them was not just a few paces. It was as if an entire lifetime had passed without ever touching each other's truths. Marisha stood still, her fingers curling lightly around the porch's wooden railing, feeling the grain that had weathered with time. She wanted to ask, to speak, to pour out everything she had just witnessed at the pier. But her throat was dry, and her breath seemed only enough to keep her standing. Mrs. Lucinda tilted her head slightly, as if sensing the eyes watching her, yet remained silent. The sound of waves breaking mixed with the wind hissing through the row of wooden posts beneath the porch. Moonlight fell on them both, blurring the boundaries between reality and dream. For a moment, Marisha wondered if Mrs. Lucinda knew anything about the woman in the red dress. Could it be that she too carried a secret the sea had guarded for far too long? The moonlight, the mermaid, and her grandmother, three things existing together on a night like this, could not be mere coincidence. She sat down beside her, her eyes searching for some sign from that aged face, but all she found was silence. Silence as though the entire ocean was holding its breath, waiting for the next moment. The sea wind that night no longer felt like a gentle lullaby. It hissed through the gaps in the wood, slipped into every seam of clothing, carrying a chill so sharp it made even the railing tremble beneath Marisha's hands. Mrs. Lucinda remained motionless, her eyes fixed on the far horizon, as if searching for something where the moon melted into the sea. Then, suddenly, she turned, her eyes clouded with age yet still sharp as a blade slicing through the thick silence between them. Her thin, bony hand clasped Marisha's. The grip was both a plea and a command to let go. In a slow breath, she let fall words heavy as stone. Derek is not who you think he is. His blood is your blood. He is your brother. Time seemed to shatter. The sounds of the waves, the wind, the faint rattle of wooden shutters all receded, leaving a dense emptiness in Marisha's chest. She heard each beat of her heart, yet could no longer feel her feet on the ground. The world around her became like a painting drained of color, leaving only the blurred outlines of reality. Moonlight fell across Mrs. Lucinda's face, etching deep wrinkles like carvings of time and guilt. Her voice trembled but was resolute, each word a blade cutting into the memories she had buried. She told how, years ago, in the chaos of Hurricane Katrina, she had lost her newborn son. In the floodwaters and darkness, she'd had only enough time to hear a single brief cry before he was swept from her arms. Years later, at a relief station on the Georgia coast, she met a 12-year-old boy whose eyes were the color of the sky before a storm. No papers, no family, only a name Derek. She had brought him to Savannah, raising him as though he were a gift the sea had returned. Never had she thought, or perhaps never dared to think, that he might be the son she had lost. But as Derek grew, there were strange signs a mother's heart could not ignore. A small scar on his leg, a way of smiling identical to his late father's pro. She kept silent, too afraid to face the truth, because it would mean another tragedy that her two children had unknowingly fallen in love. Marisha sat in stillness, her heart like a piece of fabric torn in two. The love she had cherished, the memories she had treasured, were now steeped in taboo. Every image of Derek became a thorn driven back into her heart. Mrs. Lucinda went on, her voice dropping like waves breaking against a rocky shore. She had hoped that, as the feelings between Marisha and Derek grew, one of them would drift away. But fate had only bound them tighter. She had resolved many times to speak, but each time she saw the joy in their eyes, she faltered. It wasn't until she saw the shadow of the woman in the red dress that she knew time had run out. Marisha did not cry. Her tears felt frozen, leaving only a cold emptiness spreading through her body. She looked out to sea, where the gold glimmer of the mermaid had just flashed before vanishing, and wondered if the mermaid had known this truth all along. A wave stronger than the rest crashed against the pier's posts, scattering white foam like a warning. Marisha realized then that every secret, no matter how deeply buried, will find a way to rise just like that golden light, never to be swallowed by darkness forever. Mrs. Lucinda's hand was still there, gripping tightly as if afraid that letting go would let the truth sweep Marisha away. But Marisha knew this moment had changed everything: love, family, and herself. My dear viewers, stay tuned for the next part that will leave you in awe. Take a second to like this video, subscribe, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see people joining us from all over the world. The night wind still swept across the porch, but to Marisha, the sound of it now carried other echoes: the screams, the crashing, the rush of water flooding the streets. That was when Mrs. Lucinda allowed the old memories to find their way back. Memories she had locked away for decades, now forced open. She began to speak, her voice sinking as though she were conversing with her own past. Many years ago, before Savannah became her harbor, she had lived in New Orleans. It was a city of jazz, of brilliant Mardi Gras nights, but also a place where injustice and storms always lurked nearby. When riots broke out over racial tension and poverty, and then Hurricane Katrina struck like a blade into the soul of the city, everything she had known was torn apart. In those days, Mrs. Lucinda was just a young mother, clutching her newborn son. Her wooden house sat in a low-lying area, and the floodwaters rose faster than the calls for help. She remembered the moment vividly, the sound of helicopters overhead, voices calling to one another across the black churning waters, and her son's faint cries threading through the rain like a strand about to snap. A massive wave crashed in, sweeping away everything: furniture, windows, and the cradle she had touched for the last time. She lunged after it, but the water's force was stronger than any human strength. The baby was gone, leaving a hollow space that could never be filled. After Katrina, she left New Orleans with nothing but empty hands and a heart carved out. She came to Savannah hoping to find a peaceful place to continue living, but the memory of losing her child lingered like a shadow. She found solace in helping the coastal community, caring for children abandoned after the storm, as if repaying a debt to fate. Years later, on a supply trip to a small port town, she met a 12-year-old boy huddled beside a heap of old fishing nets. His eyes were the color of the sea under gray skies, holding the guardedness and fatigue of someone who had endured too much loss. He had no papers, no family, only a name: Derek. When she asked, he said only that he had come from somewhere far away and had no one left. She brought Derek home like a gust of wind, carrying a stray seed to a new shore. Slowly he settled in, called her mother, and became part of the fish market community where Marisha had grown up. She loved him no differently than if he had been her own flesh and blood, but deep down, she still thought of him as the child the sea had sent, never imagining that fate had looped back to return her lost son. And then, when Derek grew older, small signs began to appear. A scar on his left leg, identical to the one the baby had sustained at birth, the habit of tilting his head when he smiled just like his late father. Her heart quivered with fear and tightened with the realization of the truth. But when feelings blossomed between Derek and Marisha, she stayed silent. She told herself she would find a way to stop them, but each time she was about to speak, she saw the light in their eyes, and her hand faltered. When the wedding took place, she could only stand in the crowd, clutching an old string of beads, silently praying the truth would remain buried forever. But the sea, as she had long known, never keeps secrets. And tonight, the golden shimmer of the mermaid had appeared, signaling the moment could no longer be delayed. Marisha sat there, listening to every word, as though each sound carved another tear into the fabric of her life. The image of Derek lover, husband, now intertwined with the image of a brother she had never known. She wondered, if fate had bound them together with both love and blood, was there any path forward that would not wound them both? There are secrets which, once sown into the depths of the sea, seem as though they will sleep forever beneath the waves and sand. But Mrs. Lucinda knew well the sea only keeps them the way it keeps a clam closed tight, waiting for a great wind to pry it open. From the first night, she realized that Derek and Marisha were not merely two people who had found each other, but two streams of blood running in the same vein. She had lived in a constant, gnawing fear. She had once thought that, if Derek looked at Marisha long enough, he would sense something was wrong, that some instinct would make him step back, leave her before their feelings crossed a forbidden line. But Derek did not leave. Instead, he drew closer, stayed longer, letting their eyes meet more often than an unwitting brother ever should. Many times, she had thought of calling Derek in, sitting him down on the porch, and telling him everything. But each time she opened her mouth, the image of Marisha's eyes appeared, eyes that still trusted her completely. And then she swallowed the words like swallowing a stone into her stomach, cold and heavy. She told herself that perhaps one day they would choose different paths, and the secret would die of old age with her. But the days passed like waves pressing toward the shore. Derek grew into a man, and so did Marisha. They did not drift apart, but found every way to bind themselves closer. Each time she saw them preparing goods together at the market, their laughter mingling with the vendors' calls, she felt both joy and tearing pain. It was a contradiction that had stolen her sleep for years. Joy in seeing her two children together, and pain in knowing that their love was built on a foundation that could never be accepted. The day Derek knelt to propose to Marisha by the shore, amid the beat of djembe drums and the white flowers set adrift on the water, she had stood far away, clutching her mother's old bead necklace, feeling as though she were witnessing a towering wave rise but could not warn anyone. The mermaid had not appeared that night, but in her dreams she saw golden scales flash beneath the sea's surface and heard a whisper, "Every truth will return." She had hoped that Derek, in a moment of weakness, would confess to Marisha before the wedding, that he would let her step away with dignity, spared from the pain of being bound by a forbidden tie. But Derek had chosen silence. He married her, slid the ring onto her finger, and buried the story with Mrs. Lucinda, as though the two of them were complicit with the sea in keeping a summer that would never end. Silence, she thought, is a double-edged blade. It preserves peace in the present, but cuts into the conscience each night. She had lived each day with that feeling, trying to read every glance between them, searching for any sign that the truth was leaking through. But they still laughed, still lived as though everything were in its rightful place. Only she knew everything had been misaligned from the start. When Marisha sat beside her tonight, just back from the pier, Mrs. Lucinda knew the time for silence had ended. The depth in her eyes, full of unspoken questions, was a mirror reflecting back all the years Mrs. Lucinda had avoided. And when the golden shimmer of the mermaid flashed offshore, she knew she could not keep the secret for another tide. The moment Mrs. Lucinda's confession faded, a thick, suffocating silence settled over the porch. Marisha sat motionless, as if a massive wave had just swept away the entire world she knew, leaving her stranded and exposed in the middle of the ocean. Each heartbeat echoed in her chest like a hammer, driving her deeper into a new reality, a reality where her love was no longer light, but a shadowed place tainted with taboo. Tears spilled over, salty as seawater, touching the corner of her lips and making her shiver. She recalled every moment she had trusted, every glance exchanged with Derek, every time his hand had clasped hers, as if promising a lifetime. All of it now felt like shards of broken glass, each one reflecting the image of an accomplice in a long-held lie, and at the center of it stood no one but herself. Mrs. Lucinda still held her hand, but Marisha no longer felt the warmth. That grip now seemed like a tether keeping her close while binding her tight. She knew that if she let slip a single word of blame, it would cut into the old woman's heart like a knife. But silence felt no different than swallowing a mouthful of salt, letting it corrode her slowly from within. The sea wind blew harder, carrying the scent of seaweed and damp wood tangling her hair. For a fleeting moment, she thought of Derek. He had known all along. He had stood there, placed the ring on her finger, pledged his vows, kissed her forehead, all while keeping this secret locked deep inside. That betrayal was not only a betrayal of their love, it was a betrayal of her very being, the person who had trusted him to her very core. She rose, her steps unsteady as though she had just stepped off a swaying boat. Everything around her, the sound of waves, the moonlight, the smell of the sea, suddenly felt foreign. Even this house, once her refuge, now seemed to watch her with the cold eyes of someone who knew everything but said nothing. Mrs. Lucinda called her name, her voice rough and low, but Marisha didn't turn back. She stepped into the house, down the dark hallway leading straight to the bedroom, where Derek had yet to return. Each step was a count toward the questions she was about to ask, questions she knew would have no answer strong enough to mend this wound. In the room, she sat on the edge of the bed, her eyes fixed on the empty space ahead. In her mind, memories unspooled in reverse. Derek laughing as they prepared fish together at the market, the afternoon they rode far out to watch the sunset, the tight embrace during a stormy night. All of it now only weighed her heart down further. Marisha knew this truth would not only destroy her love. If it were to come out, it might also break Mrs. Lucinda's heart, the heart that had endured the loss of a child for so many years. But it was also the act of keeping this secret for so long that had driven her into this tragedy, a tragedy even the vastness of the sea could not wash away. Outside, the waves pounded the shore like a reminder that time moves on, no matter how many hearts are broken. And somewhere offshore, the golden-scaled mermaid was perhaps diving deep, carrying her question to the bottom of the ocean. Was there still a way out that did not mean leaving herself behind? Can you guess what will happen next? Take a moment to relax. Comment 1 or "I'm still here" to continue listening. The moon cast a cold silver layer over the old wooden planks, stretching Marisha's shadow across the porch floor like a silhouette drifting away from itself. From afar came the sound of waves, mingling with the fragile song of the mermaid. Like a long strand of starlight, the sea wind had skillfully drawn past her ear. Each note seemed to carve deeper into the decision her heavy heart had already made. She turned to look at Mrs. Lucinda. Her face, in the flickering light of the oil lamp hanging by the door, bore the weariness of a life carrying both loss and secrets. The deep lines on her skin were not only from age, but from years pressed down by the shadow of truth. Marisha stepped closer and knelt at her feet. Her hands cradled the frail shoulders, the warmth of her flesh bringing both comfort and a stabbing ache. Her voice dropped low, not trembling, but weighted with restrained pain. "I will leave, but I won't let this secret be the stain that marks the end of your life." Those words, once spoken, carried the weight of both release and despair. Marisha knew that if she stayed, each day would be lived in a cycle of deceit and haunting. But leaving was not running away. It was the only way to keep her mother, the woman who had lost a child and quietly found him again, from being shamed before the community, from spending the rest of her days under the scrutiny and whispers of others. Mrs. Lucinda did not answer right away. Her eyes opened wide, then closed, as if Marisha's words had drained the last of her remaining strength. Her breaths grew longer, deeper, like someone who had swum a long stretch of sea and finally touched the shore, knowing she could never turn back. Marisha rose and walked toward the bedroom. She opened the wooden wardrobe, darkened by years, and took out a small suitcase. The soft click of the latch sounded so sharp in the stillness that she imagined even the sea had paused to listen. Each item placed inside carried a piece of memory, the scarf Derek had wrapped around her neck on their first cold night together, a photograph of the three of them at a summer festival, the pink-shelled scallop he had said would keep their love as enduring as the waves and the shore. When her hand touched the scallop, she froze. Derek's image came so vividly to mind she had to close her eyes. Part of her heart wanted to scream, to run and find him, to demand the truth, to force him to admit the pain he had buried alongside his mother. But the other part knew that any answers would only make the wound bleed more. Outside, the waves crashed harder, as if urging her on. The mermaid sang again, distant yet distinct, her voice flowing like a farewell to one about to leave the shore. Marisha rolled the suitcase onto the porch. Mrs. Lucinda was still sitting there, her eyes open, no longer looking out to sea but into the darkness, ahead the darkness Marisha was about to step into. She bent down and pressed a soft kiss to the old woman's forehead, leaving behind a warmth like a silent promise. No more tears fell, only a deep breath, and then her feet began to move across the threshold. Marisha's figure slowly blended into the night, the small suitcase swallowed up by the vast space. The sound of its wheels rolling over the wooden path carried into the distance before fading away, leaving behind an empty porch, an old woman holding on to the wind, and the mermaid's song still lingering, relentless, as if trying to hold on to something that had already drifted far beyond reach. That morning, the dawn rose slowly, as if reluctant to leave the twilight behind, wanting to hold on a little longer to the words left unsaid the night before. A thin veil of sea mist drifted low over the sand, painting a blurred curtain between Marisha and the world ahead. Each footprint pressed deep into the wet sand was a permanent mark, only to be quietly filled in by the gentle waves right after, leaving nothing but silence. From a distance, Derek stood at the water's edge, his shadow long and slanting, as though he wanted to follow but was held back by an invisible tether. He had come home late the night before, and instead of finding her by the bed, he had only found the empty space where her suitcase had been. The footprints leading from the house to the sea felt like either an invitation or a farewell, he wasn't sure. Marisha did not turn her head, not because she didn't know he was there, but because she knew that if their eyes met, her resolve would falter. The sound of last night's waves still echoed in her heart, along with the mermaid's song she had heard as a farewell. She could feel each cold grain of sand seeping into her feet, each breath of morning wind waking her skin, as if etching this feeling into her for a lifetime. Derek quickened his pace, his breath unsteady as the distance between them closed. He wanted to say everything about his fear, about the times he had been on the verge of confessing but couldn't summon the courage, about his love for her even while knowing it had been wrong from the start. But with every step closer he took, she seemed farther away, not in distance, but in the time they had already lost. When at last he touched her shoulder, Marisha stopped. The wind swept her hair back, revealing a face that no longer held the innocence of the girl she once was. In her eyes was a different light, the light of a woman who understood the worth of love, of honor, and the cost of sacrifice. She didn't speak, but he could read in her gaze that the road ahead no longer had space for them to walk together. Offshore, the mermaid's golden scales flashed in the first light of day, a quiet farewell. The tide withdrew, revealing a long stretch of sand leading straight to the horizon, the path Marisha would now take alone. She drew in a deep breath of the salty air, as if to hold for the last time the scent of the place that had once been home. Derek remained where he stood, his hands hanging loosely at his sides, making no move to hold her back. Perhaps he understood that love, no matter how deep, could not overcome the truth. And that sometimes to love someone is to let them go, to leave them with a part of their soul untouched by further hurt. Marisha kept walking, her figure growing smaller against the brightening sky. The mermaid vanished beneath the waves, leaving the sea calm, as though no whisper had ever been sent. But Derek knew those sounds still existed. They had simply chosen to leave him along with her. When she was nothing more than a dot at the point where sea and sky met, Derek closed his eyes and listened to the waves one last time, like an answer without words. And he wondered if there would ever be a day, after swimming through all the distances of their past, when they might meet again not as lovers or as kin, but simply as two people who had once loved each other with all their hearts. The Savannah Sea kept breaking in steady waves, as if it had never witnessed a love story shatter on its shore. Marisha's figure had vanished, but those fading footprints would remain forever in the memory of those who knew the story. Somewhere offshore, the golden-scaled mermaid was perhaps still swimming in circles, guarding the truths that humans were not yet ready to face. This story is not only about love, but about choice. When one is forced to trade a piece of their heart to preserve honor and protect the ones they love. Some wounds cannot heal in a day or two, but time and courage will turn them into marks that help us grow. Perhaps one day, the waves will bring Marisha back, or Derek will find a way to swim through the past. But until then, we can only stand on the shore, listen to the sea, and wonder, if it were us, would we choose to stay or to leave? If you felt something from this story, leave a comment below. Would you choose truth or temporary peace? And if you want to know part 2, where fate brings them back together in a way no one could have imagined, share this video, follow the channel, and wait for the mermaid song to call your name again. Because sometimes, in order to heal, we must hear the story once more told by the waves themselves.
Beneath the dawn's pink glow painting the Chattahoochee River, an ancient secret has just been unveiled. Young Malik, his skin shimmering with fish-like scales, is not merely a victim of cruel rumors, but carries within him the power to protect this land. As a ferocious flood struck, it was his small hands that restored a rotting bridge and tamed the raging waters. That miracle is only the beginning, for behind the turquoise radiance of the Mermaid, Neris, lie mysteries yet to be uncovered. Can Malik, once shunned, continue to confront new dark forces, safeguard the village, and uphold his vow to the river? Subscribe to the channel now to not miss the next chapter of this wondrous journey. Along the banks of the Chattahoochee River, where emerald waters meander under Georgia's blazing sun, a small Atlanta neighborhood unfolds like a fairy tale woven with the South's untamed charm. Weathered wooden houses huddle together, their rusted tin roofs reflecting golden sunlight, front yards paved with red clay bricks speckled with green moss. Most residents here are African American, families spanning generations, bound to the river, a source of life and a witness to their joys and sorrows. Among the children scampering through the streets is a peculiar boy named Malik, 15 years old, with curious bright eyes. His body bears an odd trait, patches of skin shimmering like silver scales, glinting under the sun. Rumors swirl that the Chattahoochee gifted Malik a fragment of magic, marking him as the river's emissary. The neighborhood kids, naive yet cruel, call him Fish Boy, giggling and dodging when he draws near. Their careless laughter often stings, but Malik hides his tears with a smile, finding solace in the river's soothing murmurs rather than in the eyes of others. The villagers, for the most part, keep their distance. They avoid touching Malik, wary of borrowing him fishing tools or sharing a bowl of stew. They fear his scaly skin is an ill omen, that a curse lurks beneath its gleam, threatening to drag them into an inescapable abyss. But Malik pays no mind. He listens closely, hearing the river's gentle whispers, secrets meant only for him, tales of floods breaching banks, fragile fish swimming against the current, and pink dawns mirrored in willow shadows. Malik's life has been shadowed by loss since childhood. His mother died in a stormy night when the Chattahoochee's floodwaters raged, leaving him with faint memories of her warm embrace. His father, broken by grief, remarried Denise, a sharp, proud beauty with eyes cold as ice. Denise arrived in the neighborhood with dark suits, high heels, and a chilling smile, steadily claiming control of the wooden house Malik's father left behind. The villagers watched silently, unsure if Denise came for love or ambition. Few suspected the dark scheme in Denise's gleaming eyes. Concealing her wavering heart, she plotted to seize the riverside land, hallowed ground Malik's father had nurtured, planting rice, starfruit, and sweet tangerines. That land was more than a home. It was a legacy passed down through generations, steeped in memories of kinship and the river's embrace. Malik, with his strange form and natural bond with the water, stood as the sole obstacle to Denise's designs. Denise began sowing doubt throughout the neighborhood. She started with subtle whispers. That Malik boy, his eyes shine too strangely to be safe for us. Then came malicious rumors that his scales would stir the river into a frenzy, sweeping away homes in a downpour. She cunningly shared tales with his father's old friends, planting seeds of fear. She feigned concern, asking about Malik's late-night fishing or his quiet moments soaking his feet at the dock, as if he were enchanting the water. Slowly the adults turned away from Malik. Fishboy echoed beyond the children, morphing into sidelong glances from market-bound mothers and cautious stares from old men fishing by the bank. A single suspicious look was enough to unravel the bonds of community. Yet Malik remained untroubled. He dove into the river's depths, marveling at swaying seaweed, listening to frogs blend with his own heartbeat, finding peace unmatched anywhere else. Then, on a clear moonlit night, Denise made her move. Pretending to care for her stepson, she led Malik to the river under the guise of teaching him to fish, only to shove him hard into the frigid water. The impact dazed him, sand and stones slipping beneath his feet, and Malik sank into the river's depths, where darkness swallowed all traces of hope. The current gripped him like a millstone, crushing his dreams, his heart trembling in the endless cold. Unable to resist, Malik glimpsed the moon through the inky water, realizing it might be his last sight. Sand swirled like malevolent spirits, and the river's icy breath bore down on his skin as if a curse had awakened. But the Chattahoochee wouldn't let him go. In the deep, a turquoise glow flared warm as a miraculous lullaby. Before Malik stood a captivating figure. Neris, the mermaid, her black hair shimmering like silken waves, her eyes as deep and sorrowful as the ocean's floor. She reached out, cradling him in a gentle embrace, stilling his fear. "Don't be afraid," her eyes whispered. "The river's call always protects the righteous." Malik realized the magic had chosen him as its emissary. From that moment, he was no longer the shunned fish boy, but a beacon of hope for the neighborhood. His father had been wrong to think the legacy was merely land. Denise was even more mistaken to believe she could bury the river's bloodline. Malik surfaced, his scales gleaming like pearls, wiping the dew from his face, ready to face the world above. Each step onto the shore was a triumph over prejudice, harmonizing with the Chattahoochee's joyful ripples welcoming its cherished son. Now, Malik returned with a resolve to fulfill Neris's charge, breaking the curse Denise had sown. He knew it would take more than supernatural power. It demanded a steadfast heart and boundless forgiveness. Taking a deep breath, he gazed at Atlanta's blazing sky, his eyes alight with proud determination. He was ready for a silent battle, where every act of kindness, every repaired bridge, every smile shared with a neighbor would be a piercing blow, unraveling the veil of deceit and ambition. In the quiet night, as the Chattahoochee flowed on, its whispers echoed in Malik's ears. Prove the worth of love, sow hope in others' hearts, so the river's magic not only graces your skin, but ignites faith in souls that have lost their way. Malik, the shimmering fish boy by the riverbank, became the soul of a new legend, where kindness's light vanquishes greed's darkness, and the smallest drop of water can spark a wave to transform a community. Denise paid no heed to sympathetic glances or cautious advice, her focus fixed solely on her goal. To cast Malik out of the serene world his father had toiled under sun and rain to build. In just a few days, the riverside neighborhood along the Chattahoochee transformed dramatically. Rumors about the fish boy spread like a fierce wind, scattering dry leaves across the road. What began as hushed whispers grew into venomous tales. "Look, his skin has scales, don't you see? It's a sign a curse will drown the whole neighborhood." Children whispered that Malik could turn into a fish under cover of night, that he spoke with seaweed beneath the riverbed. Adults shook their heads, their weathered dresses stained, silver hair falling softly over furrowed brows. Mothers clutched their children close, learning to steer clear of Malik, muttering prayers for the neighborhood's safety from unnatural floods. The 15-year-old boy, with clear eyes full of curiosity, became the target of every suspicious stare and wary glance. Day by day, isolation weighed heavier on Malik's small shoulders. He still went to school, forcing himself to sit at the back, alone, no one daring to share his desk. Cruelly curious eyes tightened his heart whenever the teacher called on him. Snickers behind his back flushed his cheeks, but he stayed silent. Malik didn't resent them. He understood fear often stemmed from the unknown. Denise visited daily, her cold eyes sweeping over him as if to crush any lingering faith. She deftly nudged Malik's father whenever he inquired about his son. "You should think of the future, not indulge a strange boy who's hard to trust." Malik's father, his heart already bleeding from his wife's loss, grew wearier under her prodding. He wept in the dim room, heartbroken seeing his only son shunned, yet seemed too weak to defend him. Then, On a full moon night, with the Chattahoochee reflecting silver on its surface, Denise decided to enact the first phase of her plan. Feigning kindness, she told Malik she'd take him fishing at the river, a pastime he'd loved as a child when his mother was alive. Surprised but overjoyed, Malik agreed, as it had been ages since such a simple joy. Denise told him to wear a thick jacket, prattling about how his stepmother wanted to share some time with him. They walked a winding path, Denise's heeled boots clacking on the damp cobblestones. Malik gazed at the star-filled sky, moonlight glinting through willow branches, his heart swelling with anticipation. Unbeknownst to him, behind Denise's warm smile lurked malice. At the old dock, its wooden planks rotted, Denise paused, pointing to a faint shimmer on the water. "Help me cast the net, son. Just one haul, and I'll see you're useful." Malik eagerly reached out, his eyes bright with simple joy. Denise watched, her lips curling in smug satisfaction. In a silent moment, she stepped close. A sudden shove sent Malik tumbling into the inky water. The sting of betrayal shattered his heart, but before panic could set in, the river's force enveloped him. The icy current pierced his fingers, pulling Malik to the riverbed. The moon above faded, leaving only dim streaks in his vision. The world grew eerily silent, save for his racing heartbeat and gasping breaths. Malik clawed at the slick stones, his mother's old lullaby echoing in his mind. "My child, trust the river, it will protect you." The Chattahoochee, witness to countless human triumphs and trials, did not forsake the quiet boy. Amid the dark waters, a turquoise glow flared, banishing the cold. Malik saw the slender yet powerful form of Nerys, the mermaid with sleek black hair like a dance of waves, her scales shimmering like stars. Nerys reached out, her warm smile enveloping Malik, dispelling his loneliness in the ocean's embrace. "Don't fear," her eyes seemed to say, offering 1,000 comforts. "I am here, for you are the river's child." She pressed him to her chest, her mystical warmth melting the chilling dread. Malik felt a gentle current around him, unlike the spite Denise had sown. Grasping Nerys's hand, his heart surged with hope and resolve. If the river had saved him, he would not betray its trust. Nerys guided Malik upward, the water parting like a path through jagged rocks and swaying seaweed in the dark. As he broke the surface, his scales gleaming under the starry sky, Malik realized he'd nearly lost all hope, yet magic had come from the sea's heart. Back on the old dock, now bathed in eerie moonlight, Malik peeled off his soaked pants, his bare feet touching the wood. He breathed deeply, the waves' murmurs like a song of empathy. Denise had vanished, leaving a solitary shadow on the cliff. Malik knew the real battle was just beginning, not just to prove he wasn't a monster, but to shield the neighborhood from greed and hatred. His eyes blazed with courage. He no longer feared the village's scorn, for the river had chosen him as its emissary of love and truth. The Chattahoochee would not let greed's shadow threaten their peaceful life. Malik gazed at the clear sky, vowing to himself he would use the newfound power within to shatter Denise's curse. He would touch each neighbor's heart, showing them kindness's strength, and that true magic emerges when one dares to heed nature's whispers. Under that moonlit night, Malik, the shunned fish boy, embarked on his extraordinary journey, where each step would dispel doubt, each drop of water he touched would spark hope, and the river's love would forever be the lighthouse guiding the community. Beneath the shimmering veil of water, Nerys guided Malik through ribbons of seaweed as soft as silk, leading him deeper into the heart of the Chattahoochee River. The scene unfolding before Malik was like a dream. Intricate arched walls crafted from pearls in shades of ivory, pale blue and blush pink, reflecting light from scattered luminescent flecks. Heavy droplets rolled across the pearl surfaces, weaving a symphony of sparkling light, making the underwater palace feel alive, pulsing with the river's flow. Malik stepped slowly, his bare feet touching the smooth limestone floor, cold but painless. Each step carried him through curving corridors, flanked by stone doors etched with divine fish and swirling wave reliefs. Green light from stalactites above twinkled like stars under the sea, illuminating the path to the central grand hall. The space was silent, save for the steady trickle of water, echoing like nature's own breath. In the grand hall, Malik saw Neris standing beside a large oval stone, where delicate streams cascaded like a silver curtain. Light from the stone cast emerald streaks, enveloping the area in an aura of mystery. Neris turned to Malik, her jet-black hair flowing with the current, her face gentle but her eyes resolute. The boy felt a powerful energy radiating from the mermaid, a blend of tenderness and resolve that quickened his pulse. "Malik?" Neris began, her voice soft as a lullaby in the sea's depths. "Today I will reveal the secret the river has long guarded." Malik furrowed his brow, holding his breath. Neris touched the glowing stone and the water's sound roared as if the current itself was speaking. The wall relief seemed to stir, unveiling a scene. A gloomy afternoon in a riverside wooden house, Denise leaning toward Malik's father with a cold, calculated smile hiding a will in her briefcase. Neris directed the green light to sharpen the image, revealing Malik's father's anguished face, a weathered man with silver-streaked hair, eyes brimming with tears as he signed the will. Neris explained. Denise deceived him, coercing him to draft a will granting her the riverside land before his death. That land, which he spent his life nurturing, planting rice for future generations. Her words struck Malik like thunder and he turned away, pained by the betrayal. "You are not a monster," Neris continued firmly, "but a child chosen by the river. Its waters gifted you scales and the ability to sense the pulse of fresh and salt seas. You hold latent power, yet to be awakened. Power to protect the community and punish the greedy." The green light wove into Malik's skin, making his scales gleam brighter. He shivered, feeling his cells awaken. Neris led Malik to the hall's center, where the glowing stone stood like a river god's throne. Hands clasped, her voice resonant. "The curse Denise spread isn't born of mystic power but of greed and division. She sowed fear, blaming you, turning the village against you. You must break this curse, restoring their faith. But to do so, you must prove your worth, not just to yourself, but to all who shunned you." Malik took a deep breath, emotions swirling, fury at his father's deception, anger at his cruel stepmother, and resolve fueled by Neris's trust. He nodded, voice hoarse. "I'll do it. I'll break the curse, so the river and community can live in peace." Neris smiled, her eyes warm as dawn on the seabed. She placed a hand on his shoulder, imparting a surge of warm energy. "Use the power of water and kindness. You'll find the path to reunite them." Returning to the surface, Malik felt each step steadier. Every grain of sand under his toes reminded him of his heavy duty: rebuild the wooden bridge, revive neighborly bonds, and restore trust among the skeptical. He knew the journey wouldn't be easy. The village still harbored prejudice, malicious whispers lingered, and Denise would surely resist. But Malik carried a flame of hope, kindled by Neris's magic, and the river that chose him as its emissary of justice. The Chattahoochee flowed calmly under the sunset, as if rejoicing at its child's newfound strength. Malik gazed at the fiery sun on the horizon, his scales flashing like molten metal, a vow that would never fade. He was ready to face any challenge, bringing light to hearts darkened by doubt. Deep in the tranquil waters, Neris, the guardian mermaid, watched silently, smiling with satisfaction as Malik's mission began. Dear viewers, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and dive back into the story. The twists are just beginning. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the globe. Drop a number 1 in the comments if you're loving this story so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. As night cloaked the neighborhood, Malik returned, carrying Neris's words in his heart. Do what's right in silence, and the light will shine. He tiptoed across the rickety old dock, where the rotting wooden bridge groaned with every step, as if mourning decades of neglect. The Chattahoochee flowed quietly below, its golden moonlight revealing cracked planks and gaps where iron nails had given way. This was the spot Malik chose to begin his mission. From his father's toolbox tucked in a corner of the house, Malik pried decayed planks loose, hammering in new nails with a small hammer. His hands, though small, didn't flinch at scrapes. Blood streaked through his fingers, making the scales on his skin glint brighter under the moon. The steady tap of his hammer blended with the river's soft ripples. He chopped dry wood from the old shed, tying joints tightly with rope, testing each wobbly plank. Some nights, sudden rain drenched him, leaving him shivering, but he knelt stubbornly, sealing gaps, clearing rotted leaves and mud caked on the bridge. Through those sleepless nights, Malik spoke to no one. He knew words could be twisted, but actions would prove his worth. The village slumbered peacefully, unaware that the fish boys' small hands were reviving their wounded bridge. Only the Chattahoochee listened, awaiting the fruit of his labor, a mirror reflecting his honest soul. But Denise didn't miss the subtle signs. She hired petty thugs to lurk by the river, secretly dismantling the newly fixed planks. By morning, villagers heading to work saw the bridge worse than before, cursing in frustration. Rumors spread like wildfire. That fish boy's pretending to fix it, but he's sabotaging to spite us. Denise's influence fueled their scorn, and stones were hurled, cornering Malik in darkness. One early morning, with thin mist clinging to tin roofs and dew sparkling on the river, Malik approached the bridge. He found his new planks, his silent toil smashed to pieces. A crowd's angry shouts rose, encircling him, their furious eyes craving to cast him into the water. Baseless accusations flew. "You broke the bridge to scare us! You're the river's curse!" Under pressure, Malik didn't scream. He stood silent, hands resting on his dew-soaked shirt, eyes fixed on the river that defined his life. His scaly skin reflected faint light, a reminder that the river, his sanctuary, was his true witness. The villagers yelled, urging him to leave before harm came. But Malik only sighed, stepping back from the crowd, gazing at the water curling around the banks. In the dawn's early light, the Chattahoochee's sighs soothed the wooden dock. Malik knew the fight to regain trust was long. The bridge couldn't be whole until rumors were replaced by compelling deeds. He took a deep breath, bidding farewell to the rippling water, then turned homeward, carrying the blood and sweat soaked into each plank, and a resolve to persist until the bridge stood firm by the river, a testament to the steadfast love the Chattahoochee had entrusted to him. The rainy season arrived, bringing with it growling winds that swept through the creaky wooden roofs along the Chattahoochee's banks. The sky turned ashen grey, heavy black clouds stretching endlessly to the horizon, heralding an impending flood. The neighborhood buzzed with activity as people hurriedly reinforced their roofs, hoisted belongings to higher ground, and tethered small boats to posts, bracing for the perilous moment. The air was taut as a guitar string, so tense that even the familiar crow of morning roosters felt alien, drowned out by the howling wind and the resounding clash of leaves. As the first rains of the season crashed down, the small ditches around the town surged violently, water gushing onto the streets. The Chattahoochee, once serene and tranquil, now roared to life, stretching its might, shattering old embankments, swallowing sandy shores, and sweeping away fishermen's baskets. Each wave crashed with a force that seemed bent on destruction, the water's growl sending shivers through everyone. Amid this chaos, all hope seemed to rest on the wooden bridge, the only structure linking the neighborhood to the world beyond the river. The bridge, weathered and rotting, groaned as gusts whistled through its cracks, as if a single flood could reduce it to splinters. As the neighborhood reeled under the deluge, Mrs. Denise stood amid the crowd, her voice piercing the foggy air like a blade. "It's Malik's fault. That boy's curse has awakened the river." She pointed accusingly at Malik, who stood silently by the bank. Her eyes burned with hatred, as if channeling the village's collective fear onto him. "He bears those monstrous scales, a cursed talisman that's destroyed our town's peace," she declared, leaving no room for doubt. Her words struck like lightning in the storm, freezing the crowd in panic. The villagers turned to Malik with resentful glares. They forgot the countless times he'd helped them, seeing only a scapegoat for their woes. They hurriedly retreated from the eroding riverbank, cowering behind flimsy fences, shunning Malik like a plague-bearer. Angry shouts echoed through the stormy sky. "Punish the blood-tainted boy!" "He must answer for this crisis." Families once close to Malik's father now turned their backs, clutching their children and retreating under trembling eaves. Yet the 15-year-old boy didn't flee. Malik stood firm, his eyes filled with sorrow but resolute, fixed on the raging river. Heavy rain lashed his scaly skin, each droplet glinting like a gem. In his heart, the Chattahoochee's lullaby whispered faintly, "Stand strong. The river needs you." He took a deep breath, ignoring the scornful stares, letting his soul merge with the water's fierce pulse. Amid the torrential downpour, Neris appeared in Malik's mind like a faint light piercing the murky sky. The mermaid materialized in a vivid emerald scene, her long hair flowing in a radiant glow, her eyes brimming with warmth and power. Neris's gentle whisper infused Malik with faith. "The time has come to awaken your true strength. The river has granted you its power. Use it to protect those you love." Malik closed his eyes tightly, letting the rain beat steadily against his eyelids, allowing the sting of rejection, the suspicious glares, the venomous judgments to dissolve into the deluge. He raised his right hand, fingers brushing the river's rough surface. A chilling numbness shot through his arm, then softened into a warm wave, as if the Chattahoochee were embracing him. Malik opened his eyes, blazing with unwavering resolve. He was no longer a victim of a curse, but the kindler of hope's flame. From his fingertips, a vibrant turquoise light sparked, bursting like a miraculous droplet. The glow spread, rippling across the waves, bathing the water in an emerald hue. Amid the roaring rain, the dazzling light pierced every corner of the neighborhood, dispelling the oppressive darkness. The rotting planks of the bridge, the loose stakes, suddenly grew sturdy under this radiance. Fragile boards knit together, cracks sealed shut, and loose nails tightened as if the bridge were reviving by Malik's will. The raging waters calmed into gentle waves. The old wooden bridge's tension eased, its creaks and groans silenced. The Chattahoochee, once ferocious, now lapped tenderly at the banks. The villagers stood stunned, unable to believe their eyes. The rain still fell, the wind still blew, but the bridge, once a source of dread, now stood proud and unshakable, like a fortress. In that quiet moment, the crowd fell silent. Mrs. Denise, her eyes wide at the miracle, lips trembling but wordless. Those who had rushed to blame Malik now looked like relics of their own haste, eyes sheepish, faces pale with guilt. They gazed at Malik, not with suspicion, but with awe and regret. The scaly boy now stood tall on the bridge, water dripping from his soaked shoulders, glinting like jewels. He bowed his head, not in search of glory, but in a quiet resolve to protect the land and town that raised him. When the rain ceased, the Chattahoochee lay unusually calm. Its clear waters glided past the bridge, whispering gratitude. The villagers, now enlightened, began clearing the banks, restoring the wooden bridge. They worked together, lifting rain-soaked planks, retying ropes, repairing rotted spots. Hands that once threw stones now clasped tightly, mending the wounds of broken trust. Malik watched as familiar faces returned, children who once called him Fish Boy, now beaming, hailing him as a hero. He said nothing, only offering a faint smile, his eyes shimmering with scaly tears of faith. He knew he'd proven his worth, not just for himself, but for the community that had shunned him. The Chattahoochee, now calmer than ever, flowed past the revitalized bridge, reminding all that curses exist only when hearts lack trust. Malik, the small fish boy, had brought back magic, turning a curse into a lesson of love, strength, and perseverance. The midday sun blazed down on the riverbank, casting a golden sheen over everything as if the world were gilded. The Chattahoochee flowed quietly through the town, but today its waters seemed to pause, awaiting a pivotal moment. The old wooden bridge, forged by Malik's sweat and blood, stood proud against the lapping waves. Villagers, young and old, gathered on the bridge and along both banks, their stunned gazes fixed on Malik. The boy once cast into the river, now striding forward, like a returning hero. Malik, his hands still scarred, scales glinting under the sunlight, stepped to the center of the bridge. A salty river breeze danced through his hair, infusing him with vitality. The crowd fell silent, only the hum of the water and the pounding of their hearts filling the air. Before Malik stood Mrs. Denise, rigid, her lips trembling, her frantic eyes darting across faces, searching for support, for agreement, but finding none. Malik took a deep breath, his heart racing, yet his voice rang out steady and clear. He recounted the truths Neris had revealed, each word sharp as an arrow. Mrs. Denise had deceived his father, coerced him into signing a will to seize their property. She had pushed Malik into the Chattahoochee's depths, where darkness swallowed all hope. His accusations echoed under the blazing sun, freezing the air with their weight. The villagers stood hushed, staggered by the sound of truth. The birds ceased their songs. A few swallows darted over the bridge, swooping to the wooden planks. Some mothers clutched their children, turning away in disbelief, unable to fathom that the woman who once chilled their spines now stood exposed in the light. Children's eyes, brimming with tears, whispered to each other, "Is what Malik said really true?" In every heart, a wave of doubt surged, toppling long-held prejudices. Mrs. Denise bit her lip, stammering denials, flailing her arms to protest, but a single haughty glance betrayed her, striking hollow in the hearts of listeners. Her heavy steps faltered as she retreated, grasping for the crowd's favor, but her eyes gave her away. Initial cries of "It's all lies" and "Unbelievable" faltered, then faded into silence. Her half-formed words drifted on the wind, finding no echo. At that moment, the Chattahoochee seemed to awaken, white foam bursting angrily at the bridge's base. From the emerald waters, a brilliant light shot upward, illuminating the bridge and the crowd. The light coalesced into the majestic form of Neris, no longer a vague vision but fully present, her scales shimmering like stars, her long black hair flowing with the current. She rose from the river, her upper body glowing with turquoise radiance, her lower half swaying in the water. The river roared as if a tidal deity had stirred, affirming every accusation. Neris slowly raised her hand, pointing directly at Mrs. Denise. That single gesture left the crowd in awe. The river's magic was no longer a legend, but a tangible reality. The water's rumbling seemed to rise from the earth's core, echoing around them, drawing sighs of regret from the town. The villagers turned to Mrs. Denise, their fear of Malik replaced by rising indignation. Some jutted their chins, standing to encircle her, like wolves roused from slumber. Mrs. Denise flinched, her legs trembling as she tried to retreat, but she knew escape was impossible. Her steps led her to the bridge's edge, where the river growled softly. That space, once the stage for her schemes, now framed her final reckoning. Malik stood steadfast on the sturdy bridge, his gaze gentle yet unyielding. He didn't lash out in vengeance. He closed his eyes, listening to the river's song of justice. When he opened them, he met each person in the crowd with a forgiving look, not forgiving Denise, but forgiving their blindness. He believed magic wasn't for revenge, but for restoring righteousness. The turquoise light from Neris dimmed and she sank silently into the river, leaving calm waters at the bridge's base. The Chattahoochee grew tranquil, sunlight piercing its depths, sparkling on grains of sand. Mrs. Denise, eyes hollow, was led into the crowd. Her crimes confirmed the villagers didn't seek to punish her with violence. They looked at her with pain and disappointment, the gaze of a betrayed community. Soon scattered applause broke out. It came from the children, innocent and brimming with hope, raising their voices for justice. Their clapping like seeds of hope sprouted faith in every heart. Adults joined in, shedding the weight of suspicion and guilt. The old wooden bridge, now a shrine of miracles, marked a rebirth of compassion and sincerity. Malik took a deep breath. The flood had passed, leaving crisp air alive with birdsong. He stepped off the bridge, brushing his soaked shoulders, his eyes still fixed on the river's depths, where Neris lingered. He knew his journey was far from over, but today's magic had banished the darkness. He was the Chattahoochee's emissary, not only saving the bridge, but dispelling hatred and restoring faith in the villagers' hearts. Under the returning golden sunlight, the town awoke. Beneath the bridge, children's laughter rang out, skilled hands rebuilt the riverbank, and warm meals returned to tables. Malik, once the shunned fish boy, now smiled faintly at himself and the united community. The Chattahoochee flowed on, whispering, "Justice and kindness, though buried, held the power to overcome any curse." At dawn the next morning, as the first rays of sunlight slipped through the willow leaves, the town was still stirring from sleep when the miracle began. After Neris retreated into the river's depths, the Chattahoochee continued to murmur, but its fierce flood night roar was gone. Instead, its waters flowed clearer than ever, a vibrant green like soft silk winding around the banks. The sand on the shores gleamed, as if freshly washed of the thick silt from countless dry seasons. The young men rose early, heading to the river to check, unable to hide their astonishment. The cracked, dry rocks that once stood barren now held clear water, rippling in small streams like a song of rebirth. The grass along the banks, once withered by dark, murky floods, now sprouted lush green shoots. A spring breeze carried the scent of wild grass and fresh earth, heralding a new beginning unlike any before. Malik stood by the riverbank, his scaly skin shimmering like morning stars. His gaze fixed on the river, Neris's whisper still echoing in his heart. "You are not just a messenger, but the son of the Chattahoochee's spirit." For the first time, he fully felt that power coursing through him, not just in his hands or the gaps between his toes, but in his very veins. The truth struck him so profoundly that his heart ached, yet he knew he had to share it with everyone. The villagers quickly gathered, exchanging awed glances as they saw droplets of water sparkling like jewels. Mrs. Denise, guilt etched deep into her face, quietly retreated to the back of the crowd. Families who had once abandoned Malik now returned, their eyes brimming with remorse. They had seen the fish boy face the storm alone and save the rotting wooden bridge. Now they witnessed that bridge not only enduring but radiating warmth, as if new life pulsed through every splinter. Amid the buzzing whispers, Neris appeared again on the water's surface, not as a fleeting vision, but towering like a tidal goddess. Her scales gleamed like crystallized moonlight. Her long hair flowed with the river's eddies, and her pearlescent green eyes held timeless secrets. The crowd exhaled in unison, as if beholding final confirmation. Malik was truly chosen as the son of the river's spirit, destined to revive this parched land. Neris raised her hand slowly, and a sunken relief from the riverbed, a symbol from the dawn of time, glowed brightly on the moss-covered stones. With a voice resonating like the ocean's hum, she proclaimed, "Malik is the ancient soul tasked with protecting the Chattahoochee. His strength tamed the flood, revived the waters, and brought green to the field's golden cloak. He is no monster but a gift from the river and sky to humanity." The villagers stood stunned, a ripple of applause rising. They felt the water run through their hands, cool and cleansing, as if redeeming their betrayal of Malik. The barren fields around the town suddenly bloomed with new barley, sprouts rising, stretching toward the sun. Farmers ran their hands over the moist soil, tears welling in their eyes. They had been wrong to doubt the boy, but now, every breath of the earth and sky proved that faith had returned, stronger than ever. Mrs. Denise, shoulders trembling, stepped forward into the crowd. She bowed her head, tears glistening in her eyes. "I'm sorry, Malik. I deceived your father, pushed you into the river. I deeply regret it." Her voice choked, faltering, yet it was the final drop that awakened the community's compassion. Malik showed no hatred. He only offered a gentle smile, his eyes sparkling with radiant scales. He walked slowly to face Mrs. Denise and the town. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting a warm golden glow on his hair. He spoke softly. "I'm not here for revenge. I only want to help, as my father did. The river gave me its strength, and I'll use it to protect everyone, to keep this bridge sturdy, to keep these waters forever vibrant." Malik's words rang out like an eternal vow. The villagers bowed their heads, hearts swelling with reverence. Those who once feared him now smiled sincerely, reaching out to clasp his small but resilient hands. Mrs. Denise watched in silence, sobbing as she realized true strength lay not in ambition, but in forgiveness and love. The air bloomed with life, birds chirping in the willows, grasses swaying in the warm breeze. Malik turned to the river, his scales glinting with hope under the sun. He felt the protective warmth of the earth and water, knowing he had found his place, worthy of his ancient soul's mission. The Atlanta neighborhood by the Chattahoochee was no longer divided by prejudice and suspicion. The old wooden houses now pulsed with new life, shaded by vibrant willows. The rebuilt bridge was more than a crossing. It was a symbol of reborn faith. Golden fields stretched to the horizon, a reminder that when humanity and nature unite, miracles emerge. And Malik, once called Fish Boy, now walked through the town as a living testament to the power of love. He was no monster, but the son of the Chattahoochee, an ancient soul, a messenger of hope and life. As the spring festival neared, they would recount the legend of the boy and the river, passing it from generation to generation, so no one would forget that faith and forgiveness, above any curse, would always awaken life's magic. Mrs. Denise trudged along the red dirt path leading out of the village, each step heavy with the weight of her sins. The wooden houses lining the Chattahoochee, where she once strutted with power and cunning, now met her with scornful glances and hushed gossip. Her high heels clacked on the damp cobblestones, but no one turned to look. Head bowed, she felt each stare slice into her heart. She had lost everything, honor, status, and claim to this weathered land. The community had risen against her, expelling her from the house she had unjustly seized. Shame was etched in the wrinkles around her eyes, her long-held greed laid bare, leaving her reeling in the storm of public condemnation. The accusations didn't stop at her deceit of Malik's father or pushing the boy into the river. They unearthed a darker past where she exploited others' trust for personal gain. Banishment wasn't just punishment, it was a humiliating social verdict. As Mrs. Denise slunk away, Malik was greeted with fervent applause. Cheers echoed across the meticulously restored wooden bridge, where he had proven his courage. Villagers lined up in 2 rows, from weathered fishermen to tender mothers, pulling Malik into their midst, embracing him tightly to express their gratitude. The fish boy of yesterday had grown, not in body, but in spirit. His scaly skin gleamed like gold, and his eyes, though marked by past hardships, now radiated the stature of the Chattahoochee's guardian. Malik spoke little. He offered a gentle smile, raising his hand to wave. In that moment, a final raindrop from the afternoon rolled down his cheek, mingling with the scales along his jaw, reflecting both tenderness and pride. He was grateful, yet humble. His mission was far from over, and the faith the community placed in him was sacred. As the cheers subsided, the Chattahoochee stirred with gentle ripples, as if joining the village's joy. From the turquoise waters, Nerys, the mermaid with pearlescent scales, rose gracefully. Her jet-black hair flowed with the current, her gentle eyes brimming with boundless love. The crowd stared, unable to look away, for Nerys was not just a presence, but a symbol of acceptance and kindness. When Nerys smiled, the air around the riverbank softened. For ages, the Chattahoochee had been merely a lifeline, a place of conflict and deceit. Now, under the mermaid's gaze, it became a witness to compassion and justice. The villagers felt it clearly. Love was the most precious treasure, not power or personal ambition. News of Malik's miracle and Nerys's appearance spread across Atlanta. People retold the tale of the fish boy from the riverside town, recounting the nights Malik quietly repaired the rotting bridge, the moment he unleashed his power to halt the raging flood. Listeners felt their hearts stir, for in this modern world, it had been too long since they heard of spirits guarding nature. Volunteer groups flocked to the town, eager to learn from Malik's song and the Chattahoochee's serenity. Orphaned children who once dreamed of a warm haven now saw in Malik a heroic, compassionate older brother. Those who had been shunned, feeling worthless, found new strength. They shared stories of how Malik treated everyone with sincerity, free of hatred or envy, always believing in the power of change. His story spread like a spark igniting a citywide flame. Beyond the riverside, young people in downtown Atlanta followed the tale. They posted it on social media, sharing images of Malik on the bridge under a fiery sunset, his scales glinting like an ocean spirit. Each share, each comment, carried a yearning for hope. In a chaotic world, there was still room for miracles, forgiveness, and kindness. Many took small actions, cleaning riverbanks, aiding struggling families, restoring forgotten bridges, as if bringing a piece of the true story to life. Yet deep within the river, Nerys never truly left. As night fell and the waters stilled, her whispers reached Malik's ears. "You've done well, but your mission isn't over. More secrets await your discovery." Malik closed his eyes, listening to the steady lapping of waves, a reminder that his journey stretched far ahead. The Chattahoochee, with its newfound faith, would keep flowing, carrying both miracles and challenges, urging its young protector to grow stronger. The story of Malik and the Chattahoochee was far from finished. In every cool droplet, in the waves' cheerful song, in the crescent moon reflecting on his scales, mysteries lingered in the river's depths. And each time the riverside breeze tousled his hair, Malik felt Nerys's warmth, a promise that magic never ended. It only awaited a heart kind enough to keep believing and daring forward. The story of Malik and the Chattahoochee River is like a mirror reflecting a simple yet powerful truth. Kindness, though fragile and easily overshadowed by prejudice, holds the strength to transform an entire community. From the fish boy shunned and blamed for every hardship, Malik rose with courage, restoring the rotting wooden bridge and taming the raging flood. Not once did he complain. He quietly used his small hands to heal the wounds endured by both people and nature. Each new nail, each tightened plank carried the echo of compassion, awakening the town to a profound realization. Sometimes, the greatest strength comes not from power or violence, but from the humblest actions. When Mrs. Denise was banished, carrying her greed and shame, the community truly grasped the value of trust and forgiveness. They bowed their heads to apologize to Malik, but he only smiled gently, saying he simply wanted to help, as his father had done. That was the true miracle. The one once scorned and treated cruelly stood tall, inspiring countless hearts to find strength within themselves. The Chattahoochee, with Nerys by its side, proved that nature always chooses open, hopeful souls to preserve the essence of life. But the story doesn't end there. Beneath the calm waters, Nerys whispered to Malik that his mission was far from over. Ancient secrets still lay hidden in the riverbed's depths, perhaps shadowy forces or opposing currents threatening the restored balance. When drought returns or another flood looms, will Malik be able to stop a greater danger? Will love and courage suffice against challenges fiercer than any storm? To my friends in America, the tale of Malik and the Chattahoochee is more than a riverside legend. It's a powerful reminder of the strength of kindness and faith. Subscribe to our channel to join us on this wondrous journey, share this story to touch more hearts, and leave a comment about the moment that moved you most. What do you think lies ahead for Malik? Is there a dark force lurking, waiting to be awakened? Stay tuned for the next chapter of Malik and the Chattahoochee's saga. And to you, my dear audience, get ready for more legendary tales that will leave you in awe. Before you settle in, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what we're doing here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world.